All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of the Build Show podcast. That's right, my weekly time to get together with you guys and go deep. You know, I've got a topic today that's near and dear to my heart. I shouldn't say dear to my heart. My heart is literally afraid of this topic, but I think it's a really important one for us to discuss. I think it's a perfect podcast topic. We're going to be talking about top 5 risks that we take, especially as a small business owner, custom builder in the job that we do. Here's the precipice for this podcast. You know, I was actually at a job site this morning and was thinking, what do I want to talk about today? And as soon as I pulled up to this job site, I was like, this is one of the most risky jobs I've been to in a while. It wasn't my job. It was visiting another builder. Builders First Source invited me to the job to go see a Pella thing going on. Flat roofs, scuppers all over the place through parapet walls, no overhangs, just lots of risky stuff happening. Lots of plumbing on exterior walls, an outdoor shower that I'm concerned might have some freeze issues. Just lots and lots of risk. Now, thankfully, when I met the builder, he was a Build Show fan and talked through some of those risks with me and helped me mentally mitigate that they've thought about them. But it just made me realize, you know, as custom builders, there's inherent risks in what we do. And a lot of times I think of those as construction defects. So later in the morning, I was like, you know, I wonder what ChatGPT would have to say about this. And I just throw it in as a prompt on AI. And I was like, you know what? These that ChatGPT came up with as a top 5 are actually pretty darn good. And I'm going to give them some color commentary. So full disclosure here, I'm using AI on today's podcast, and I'm kind of commenting on what I found, because AI is never going to replace us as builders, but man, it can be very helpful. I use it on a daily basis. So that being said, top 5 risks and the ways that I think you might mitigate them as a small business owner and specifically as a custom builder. Today's Build Show from the Build Studios in Austin, Texas. Let's get going. All right, guys, before we jump into today's podcast, I want to say a big thanks to our podcast sponsor. North Atlantic is the company name, but you might know them under Architectural Concepts. This is an interior door manufacturer. Their website is archconceptsllc.com. I have not used them, but you know who is a giant fan of this company and uses them all the time? My buddy Wade Paquin, WKP Builders. Wade brought these guys into the Build Show fold. Absolutely raves about the high quality these are. And if you've ever seen any of Wade's videos, he just builds phenomenal houses. So Wade is a trusted source when it comes to anything that he's recommending when it comes to finished carpentry. That's for darn sure, let alone other stuff. But here's a couple talking points on it that really got me. Premium grade style and rail flush doors that are architecturally correct, allowing endless design possibilities. Okay, I like this. So far we're looking good. Uses a superior poplar hardwood edge designed to have continuous bond with the MDF core. Okay, that probably means we've got good screw holdout is what I'm thinking. And then lo and behold, point 3, passed extra heavy duty testing for screw holdout strength, 342 pound screw pull test. That's a lot of weight, that's good. That means these have done well. Green Gold certified is standard in all doors. Our standard MDF's 100% recycled wood residuals with no added formaldehyde and is 30% more moisture resistant than standard MDF. And they use a superior high solids primer developed for MDF. Lots of other bullet points. Very impressive company, archconceptsllc.com. And if you're over on the buildshow.com website, you're going to notice that these guys have sponsored Wade's content. He's such a fan of theirs. I think this is a mutual love affair between these guys. I need to check them out. I'm going to see if I can source those for my jobs. Very impressive. All right, so let's get into the risks. You know, I talked about construction defect liability as what I would consider risk number 1. And interestingly enough, I actually typed this into a couple different chat bots to see what they said. And ChatGPT says cash flow risk is the number 1 killer of businesses. But if you're watching the Build Show, you'll notice that on my computer, I actually have Google Gemini up. I'm sure you know if you just go to google.com, there's AI mode. And that AI mode brings up a free chatbot for you. And so this is my result right here in the page. Give me the top 5 risks that custom builders take in owning a business. They think number 1 is liability for construction defects. I would agree with them. In my 30 years of construction, I've seen a lot of lawsuits. Unfortunately, on some of my projects, when I was an employee, even a couple times as I've been a builder, I've gotten to some dust up over problems, and I've seen a lot of problems on remodels. And I've gotten a lot of calls from builders that are getting sued and are talking to me about the issues. So liability for construction defects. This says builders are legally responsible for structural issues, design flaws, or shoddy workmanship that appears years after a home is sold. These claims often lead to expensive lawsuits and damaged reputations. I can't reiterate that one enough. And this is where it comes back to that job site today. You know, a flat roof typically is a TPO membrane if you're here in Austin, Texas. If in your other parts of the country, it might be a torch down. But a white TPO membrane is really a roof that's only going to last about 20 years. You might be able to find some thicker TPOs or some other membranes, like we actually use PVC quite a bit on our projects. And I really like Kemper roofing. But a flat roof in general is gonna need maintenance, possibly replacement within 20 years. How many clients do you think actually know that? And if you had a premature failure, let's say you had a TPO weld on a seam, you know, they overlap the seams on this white membrane that gets put down on top of a roof. What if you had a premature failure at, let's say, year 12? Well, in year 12, where I am in Texas, I could be sued as the original builder. And do you think my clients are going to be like, you put a roof on that has a problem in year 12? They are not going to be happy about that. They're probably going to bring me and my roofer into a lawsuit. And at a minimum, there could be some reputational damage, even if there isn't a lawsuit, because imagine owning a house for 12 years and changing the roof. I don't think very many people realize that when they commission that architect to design a modern flat roof building. And even worse for me is the job I went to today seemed to have just a random architectural designer, certainly not an architect. And man, there was lots of other decisions on this house that this is risky for the client, for the building, and for the builder. I bet there was no less than 7 or 8 exterior walls that had a serious run of plumbing in them. And of course the builder insulated that plumbing, or the plumber did, right? They're doing everything they can, the builder and the plumber, to mitigate the risk. But when you build a 2x6 standard construction wall that had great zip sheathing on the outside, I was thankful for that, no exterior insulation, and you put a plumbing pipe right in the middle of that 2x6 wall, and then let's say you fill the cavity with dense packed cellulose or open cell spray foam, what happens when you get a freeze that lasts like we had in 2022 in Texas, where we were down to like 15 degrees for a week straight? I think you're gonna have a lot of leaks and a lot of problems. And very likely that plumbing pipe, when the insulator's there, might get pushed to the furthest outside portion of the wall where the wall's coldest. And you really think that that half-inch insulation on that plumbing pipe, which is probably R2 or 3, is going to do anything to keep that pipe from freezing? Now, if it's PEX, you're better off. Very likely that PEX might be able to expand and not break on you. But anywhere you've got a connection with PEX, they're extremely vulnerable to breaking. The other thing I mentioned on that job was outdoor shower. Outdoor showers are risky. You've got to have a drain down mechanism for an outdoor shower. I mean, when I built the lowest cost production builder home in the market, when I first was building houses in the 90s, every single hose bib we had was a standard non-frost-free hose bib. And in the basement of those houses, you'd have a shutoff valve with a bleeder. So you'd shut off the water, you'd open the bleeder valve, then you'd go outside and open up the sillcock, open up the hose bib, right? And then the water would fall out because it was also pitched and it was copper. We knew enough to pitch them. It was cheap, it was easy, it worked, and we didn't have freezes, unless of course someone forgot to drain their lines, which was their fault. I guess my point is, we're liable for the architect, the designer doing something dumb when we build it and we don't say anything. When we don't say, you know, this is a really terrible idea. We really need to move this plumbing from this wall to that wall. And if you don't want to do that, I'm going to take every precaution I can to make sure this isn't a problem. But I want you to sign here on this piece of paper that my lawyer drew up that said, I'm doing this, I'm building this under protest. And if you get a cold snap of 2 weeks of 15-degree weather, this is going to freeze and leak, and I'm not responsible, right? Who's to say if we had 7 or 8 days of freezing weather, we might not have 20 days in 2 years from now. No one's to say. We don't know, right? The weather is unpredictable. It's not under our control. So what we want to do is take control of where we can take control, and we need to think about the risks and mitigate them. I think, frankly, the same goes with flat roofs. Anytime we see a flat roof, we should, number one, budget for the best contractor we can. And number two, we should use the best products we can and make sure the client's informed if they choose not to use that really high-end product with the best warranty, that they're choosing it and it's for their budget reasons that they want to do something else, right? So that they're complicit with the decision to not use a product that might last 25 or 30 years or have a longer warranty or be the best installer. And they are physically saying to you, hopefully on an email, hey, I want to use the really budget system. I want to use the really thin TPO. I want to use the roofer that gave us the lowest cost against your best wishes or against your judgment call, Mr. Builder or Mrs. Builder. I think we take, as builders, a lot of liability that we don't need to by not pushing back. Am I saying don't do flat roofs? No, I've done a lot of them, trust me. And for the most part, we've done pretty well. I have had more leaks over flat roofs than non-flat roofs. And you know, the other thing to think about is when you have a flat roof, you got a scupper typically. You have a hole in the wall that needs to be flashed in a 3D fashion that's not easy. You have a scupper that needs to come out from the manufacturer and not have any leaks. It's just a very tricky assembly, let alone the lack of an overhang, the lack of a a brim or a hat or a bill to protect that house and those windows and those walls from getting soaked. So we just need to take everything up several notches. We need to go to the best possible install. We need to put head flashings on all those windows. We need to not go to the least cost products. We need to go to the best products with the best install. And lastly, consider on a really high profile job getting an envelope consultant. You know, I have a flat roof job going now that will actually be my first green roof. And I was initially pretty concerned about it, right? You know, the idea that the roof is flat, yes, then it's gonna get 10 inches of soil and then we're actually gonna water it. Or at a minimum, the sky's gonna water it and it's gonna hold all that dirt up there. We need the best minds. I have a great roofing contractor who's done this before. I have great products from Henry that are designed for this. And we got a waterproofing consultant to help us spec it all. And they're gonna come and inspect as well. Like I'm thinking I wanna do a bathtub test on this job. It's really important to get those details right. And by the way, it's a high profile client, right? This is not an inexpensive job. If we have a problem, they're gonna look at my team and say, what'd you do wrong? So I wanna make sure I've got all the belt and suspenders and I've got all the eyes to look at it. Okay, so we spent a lot of time on construction defects. Let's look at number 2, although ChatGPT thought this was number 1, cash flow and financial instability. I actually think this Gemini result here is pretty light in really telling the problem. It says managing cash flow is the leading cause of business failure for builders. They often have to pay for labor and materials up front while waiting for client milestone payments, creating dangerous funding gaps. In reality, it's extremely dangerous when it comes from a cash flow perspective because we often are floating jobs and things don't get any easier, they actually get harder as you get bigger. So, you know, when you have a small company with just a couple of employees or 1 or 2 jobs going, you typically have clients that are willing to maybe even take a draw twice a month, especially if it's a cash job. When you get bigger companies, bigger jobs, more people, bigger payroll, studios that you need to pay the bills on a monthly basis, trust me, I'm drawing from experience here, everything gets harder when it comes to cash flow. And I've been in business for 20 years now, and cash flow still is tough, guys. I actually own two businesses. I own a home building company with my business partner, Tim Hill. And then I own the Build Show business, right, that we do. And the Build Show business, as we've grown and added people, cash flow is tough. I mean, that monthly bill of, we have like 25 people around here at the Build Show now. That's a lot of money on a monthly basis. And making sure that we get our bills paid, when we invoice people, that they pay those on time. It's not easy. As you know, tracking down payments is tough. I actually, frankly, am so thankful I never got into commercial construction. I hear from some of my commercial buddies that people stretch out payments 30, 60, 90 days. It's brutal. ChatGPT says one bad project can drain working capital. Boy, that is 100% true. That's way to go. That's totally true. How to mitigate it. This is pretty interesting from ChatGPT. Strong draw schedules tied to milestones. That's really for a fixed price builder. I would say for my cost plus friends like I am, you've got to have a monthly draw schedule. For some jobs, for some builders in years past, I actually did bi-monthly. There's nothing wrong with that, especially with a cash client. The other thing you need to do is make sure you get a healthy deposit. And for all of our jobs at Reisinger Build, we get a separate bank account so the client can know that we're not commingling funds. I know more than one builder that went out during the recession by commingling funds and robbing Peter's job to pay Paul's job. And boy, that was a recipe for disaster during the last recession. My hope is that we won't have the same type of recession if we do slow down in America like we did in the 07-08 period. But do yourself a favor, do your clients a favor, open up a separate bank account for every job, put their deposit in that job, and make sure that their deposit is going to cover at least an entire month's draw plus. And think about your heaviest month. It needs to cover your heaviest month. You never be drawing from your own business funds to pay subcontractors. Clients need to pay their own jobs out of their own reserves. Lastly, this is a really interesting one. Cash reserves of 6 to 12 months fixed overhead costs. That's hard, guys. I'll be honest. It's only been the last 2 or 3 years that I've been able to make that. I'm not sure I have 12 months, but I definitely have 6. And that was tough for us. We're hoping to buy office space / land someday. And so we've kind of used it as a co-fund. It's our rainy day cash reserve. It's also our fund that we're hoping to use to purchase property at some point that we can build an office. So cash reserves, man, super important. And honestly, my business partner and I have taken lower salary and really no bonus out of the company in the last couple of years to be able to do that. And I'm really thankful we have those reserves. Okay, next one. And this is interesting. This one is in both Gemini and Google and ChatGPT, but I really like the way Chat calls it. They say contract and legal risk. Poorly written contracts, scope gaps, or handshake agreements expose builders to lawsuits, unpaid change orders, and liability claims. Holy cow, guys. In my 20 years I've been in business, I could probably tell you a story about each one of those. Find a really good attorney early, pay them to get yourself a contract. If you have a state that has a promulgated contract like we do here in Texas, absolutely use that. That's the Texas Association of Builders contract that I used for years here in Texas. Now I've gone on and basically modified that for my own contract that my construction attorney has used. But anytime I came to a dust up with a client over the years, I added to the contract and made sure I put specific language in the contract for that. Even things as minor as I had a savvy client who should have known better, who absolutely had to have this Italian marble. And lo and behold, all the problems that you know about marble that they should have known. This is I don't want to say any more other than savvy. Stains on their marble, chips on their marble, and they absolutely freaked out about it. And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you of all people should know better." And you selected this very expensive kit. It was like $50,000 for a pretty standard kitchen for the countertops. So what do? We put that into our contract. Hey, if you're selecting marble or other natural stones, this, and this specific thing can happen to you, and don't think you're the one that it's not going to happen to, right? By the way, initial on each one of these. So our contract can be perceived a little bit as onerous, but I think it's a win. You know, we sit down with our clients and really go through that contract on a very long meeting and make sure they understand it. We talk about it and say, hey, you don't have, let's say, marble, for instance, selected on this job, you have something else. So this may not apply to you, but no, this is, if you change your mind, here's what's happening. All those things that we've had a problem with over the years, we've put into that contract. The other thing that's interesting about this that I think is worth mentioning is ChatGPT says, even winning costs time, stress, and legal fees. That's so true. You just don't want to get into a legal disagreement with a client. It is not worth it. Nobody wins. It's terrible. Okay, let's move on. Labor and subcontractor risk. I think as custom builders, this is a big one for us. Skilled labor shortages, unreliable subs, aging trades, and misaligned incentives. Gosh, there's so much to expand upon with that. Most any time I've seen some issue on the job that's a craftsmanship issue, where the client is upset with, let's say, a poor install, two things either happen there. Either we got the lowest bidder and we got what we paid for. That certainly happens. Or we just didn't know who to talk to about this. I see this a lot in Texas with tile installs. You know, there's some really high-end fancy tile installs here in Texas. We use a lot of tile down here. And there's some beautiful tile places like Ann Sachs. Have you heard of that? I absolutely love that. When I built my in-laws house a couple years ago, the whole house is full of Ann Sachs. I have fabulous tile. If you use Ann Sachs tile and you're not using a top-notch tile installer, you know, of course, there's a million options out there on tile, but you can, even the least trained client can see and spot a not very good tile job. So, man, you've got to find the right subs. And for me, using those subs time and time and time again is critical. I should have thought about this ahead of time. It's a solo podcast today, so I don't have all my tips and tricks on finding and retaining subs. Maybe we can do another podcast specifically about that. But subs that you use for years and years typically are people that you can trust, typically are people that you're making sure are made whole. You know, you might find that fantastic sub, but if you use them and you hose them on the job, like, hey, you bid this at $20,000, I'm not gonna pay your $2,000 extra. Well, that was a change order that wasn't in the original scope. Well, if you hose them on that, they're probably not gonna be around for that next job. Even if you need to pay that $2,000 out of your builder fee to make sure that tile guy is made whole, you should. I can think of many, many subs that have gone out of business over the years. They were excellent craftsmen, terrible businessmen, and all it took was one big job where the GC or the builder was like, no, I'm gonna make sure that I pocket that, or I'm looking after my client. And this GC, or this subcontractor rather, absolutely lives paycheck to paycheck. Fabulous craftsman, terrible businessman. All it takes is one change order that's unpaid and they're wiped out. I mean, think about it for you and I. It's like one end of job job request for $300,000 that a client's like, no, I'm not paying that for XYZ reasons. Sue me if you want it. Think about how painful that is. That happened to me once in my career, and it took me multiple years to recover from that. It was absolutely terrible. So don't do that. We don't want that done to us. Don't do that to others. I mean, it's kind of the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would want to be treated. What's Jesus actually say? What is the actual Bible verse? I can't remember. Look it up. That is an actual Bible verse. Treat people how you want to be treated. And that's definitely true with subs. And that's the way that you're going to hold people for a long period of time. Let's move on. We've got two more to go. Market and demand risk. Remember, custom building is cyclical and very interest rate sensitive. Definitely true in The middle market and the lower market, maybe a little less so in the upper market, but the way that I've diversified to kind of help with that is we do both building and remodeling, new construction and remodels, and that has absolutely helped me, and I would highly recommend that. But typically a backlog, as soon as things go downhill, that backlog of jobs is going to vaporize. They're not going to do it. And high-end custom homes, often it's not that they don't have the money, it's that they don't feel comfortable spending the money. If their stock portfolio went down, they may still have quite a bit of money in stocks, but they don't feel good about selling it to do the house when it's in a down cycle. So there's a fair amount of risk in that. The way that I have mitigated that, and I'm not sure this is great advice, I'm just looking back at the blessings that I've received. We've moved more and more into the upper market. And in the upper market, we're asking people to pay cash for these jobs for the most part. People aren't getting loans for these projects, and that certainly helps. And again, we're also taking, like I said earlier, very big deposits on jobs before we start. So I think those help mitigate that risk. I think the last thing I want to mention here, personal burnout and key man risk. The business often is the builder. I think that's true with a lot of businesses in America. Sales, estimating, client management, quality control, and problem solving all run through one person. Whew, that's definitely dangerous. Long hours, high stress, constant conflict, health or family issues can halt the business. And of course, it's difficult to scale without losing control. That's probably a phone call to my friends at Breakthrough Academy to talk to you about how to get through that. But if you've got one key employee too who holds the keys of the kingdom, and that person goes away, it can be very difficult to come back from that. So we need to think about, how do we retain those key employees? How do we make sure that they're bonused in a way that is with the benefit to the company, that they win as well? And I think also making sure that you, for yourself and for your employees, have intentional boundaries and time off. Don't be texting with your clients after hours. If they're texting you at 6 o'clock, you need to tell them something to the effect of, gosh, Chris or Jana, I would love to answer this. I'm just about to sit down to dinner with my family, assuming this is the first time they've texted you. I'm gonna text you back in the morning on this. And they're gonna get the message pretty quick, but you might have to tell them at some point, hey guys, if you text me after 5 p.m., I'll be replying to that text when I hit the office at 7:30 in the morning. So I'm happy to have you text me, but go ahead and know that it's going to take a little bit for me to get back to you when it's an after hours or weekend text. That can be hard. You have to set your own boundaries on that. But boy, that's really important. Guys, hopefully you enjoyed a little risk management. I know I did not enjoy this, and I think I'm joking by saying that you enjoyed this, but talking about it is important because as builders, we do take a lot of risk in these businesses. And I've always said that some of my best friends are people that understand the risk that I take and the stress that I am under as a builder. It's one thing to have buddies that are chiropractors or that are entrepreneurs or in the tech industry or that are doctors or lawyers, but I think the stresses that we face as a builder are different. And so make sure you've got a group of folks that you can call when you've got a problem. I have a Builder 20 group, and I have several builders there that know all of my business that I can call. I have a business partner too, Tim, that we talk regularly about problems in the business, about making sure that we're going to be able to satisfy clients, and frankly about the risks that come with building and how to mitigate those. And the longer you're in business, the more that you'll be able to mitigate those risks. But there is no silver bullet, right? I mean, just because we've been in business 20 years doesn't mean we're gonna not have a problem next year that's gonna be super painful, or maybe even above our ability to withstand it. So this is a risky business. My hope is that you guys are watching the Build Show, which is our video channel, to learn how to mitigate those construction defect risks. That's a big part about why I do my videos, is because I'm wanting to build healthier, less risky houses that are going to have less problems for people over time. And the last thing I want to say, don't be afraid to say no to a job. I don't know how many builders I can tell you that almost every builder, they have at least one client over the years that they said, you know, if I would have given that client a check for $50,000 when they came in the door and said, I'm not going to build for you, here's $50,000, that would have been way better than whatever money they made on that job or didn't make on that job. So we need to be really good at vetting people, vetting clients, making sure that if we're going to do business with people, that they're people that we want to do business with and that are going to treat us like they want to be treated, right? Guys, I appreciate your support. This is a little early to be talking about it, but I hope you guys have marked your calendars for September for Build Show Live. We are in San Antonio this year. In fact, do I have my Build Show Live? Oh, no, I don't. I was thinking I had my Build Show Live hat on. We're going to be in San Antonio. I think the dates are the second week of September. Registration's not open yet. It'll open probably late spring, but I would love to have you come for San Antonio's Build Show Live this year. Another show that I will be at that's worth mentioning too is the Journal of Light Construction, JLC Live show, which is really just a couple, 7-8 weeks away up in Providence, Rhode Island. Fabulous show, run by the same company that runs our show. It's in effect kind of a sister show to ours. If you've only got a budget for one show in the whole year, I'd love for you to come to Build Show Live. If you're in the Northeast, JLC Live's an awesome one. But my hope is that I will see you guys at some point out on the trade show circuit this year, learning more, expanding, sharpening your saw, and bringing excess capacity to your company and to your personal abilities. Guys, I appreciate the support. Hit that subscribe button below. We've got new podcasts every Friday. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Build Show Podcast.